Tape number 2.
Now, we now had a situation where we needed the various services that a community provides. We needed security people. We needed garbage collection. We needed a little school. We even needed cultural activities because now there was this awakening. And so, how do we motivate people so that they arise from the past morass they've been in? Well, there are 2 ways, of course. One is through recognition and honor, and the other way is by the material things in life. And of course, at a time when a person is starving, doesn't have food or clothing, or the other things, needs more, who needs honor and who needs recognition? I think you need at that point material things. And this is where the package program came into effect. Every so often, everybody got an extra ration through the package program as such. And the children, of course, anybody with children or the ill always came first. We established priorities in that respect. Then the next, we issued script, which could be turned in for whatever they wanted in the package program. If a person wanted to work and a woman wanted to work for lipstick, we had the lipstick, and wanted silk stockings or scented soap. Now, some of these people, as I mentioned, may not have even cared about the material things. They may have wanted to use this for barter, for other things. As far as we're concerned, we didn't know, and we didn't want to know. As far as bartering, there had been several cases where we told our people in the displaced persons camp that they were putting in jeopardy the whole camp if they were found, it was illegal then to do black market. And several of our people had been caught. And we told them that there is nothing that we could do, the chaplain or myself, to resist the American military government, because if Goyim were found, they'd be treated the same way, and we couldn't interfere with the military authorities. So if they did it, they shouldn't expect, and couldn't expect any help from us, especially with the fine cooperation we're getting from the military government in general. Before this, you asked, couldn't we get things from General Collins' stores? I would say, although we didn't ask, there are many things that we got that we didn't have to ask for. In other words, it was done unofficially, without any request. It was done because they wanted to do it. For example, we probably got during Pesach extra rations of meal to make into matzahs. Now, don't forget this, that the American military government also did this. Working as a military governor of the area, the American military government said that this portion of food, or whatever it may be, had to be a percentage of the general civilian population. And this percentage was a better level than the general civilian population. So in a way, it was of help because of this relationship. To get back to the camp, which was run incidentally by a council and the mayor, we now had a garbage detail. We had a teacher with several children in school. We now had a cultural group, an acting group, and one of the things we needed was a piano. And where do you get a piano? Well, we looked around and we found out that there was a former Nazi who had a very nice piano. I don't know where he was, but his wife was there. So I asked for volunteers to help me bring the piano. I took a truck. Now I want you to imagine and think of this. 10 men. Not one of them weighing, I think, over 125 pounds. Emaciated, weak. And I asked for volunteers. I got thousands if I had. So I picked out 10 of the most eager. And I want to tell you that these 10 men had the strength, each one of them, of Goliath when I decided to take the piano. And I strode up in my best military fashion to the door and pounded on the door. I showed the woman my letter from the commanding general that I could appropriate anything. And she says, my husband wasn't a Nazi. So I said, and I said, in my best Yiddish German, Emphasis de Memes? And 3 guys behind me so started giggling. So one of them poked me in the side and says, Chava, that's a Hebräische Wort. Sie versteht nicht. So I says, he'll translate. So he asked her, she said, yeah. So I said, if it is, here's a receipt. I gave her a receipt, which I'm sure she never saw the piano again. And my 10 emaciated guys carried that piano out like it was a ping pong ball onto the truck. And we had a beautiful baby grand piano that was brought into the rec hall. And in that rec hall was some of the nicest plays written in Yiddish, which incidentally I think is an unfortunate thing, even though it's a hybrid language. It's there's a lost art, an art that's really being lost to the world, the Yiddish theater. In any event, get back to the city. We now had a full going concern here. We had people working who wanted to work. We had people who we knew were transients that were coming into camp and then leaving. We didn't want to know too much about that because the less we knew, the less we would have to answer to anybody. We had a problem with the garbage. Nobody wanted to be a garbage collector. And so I arranged anyway with Kibbutz Betar. They were constantly having transients, and we knew that.
How far was Kibbutz Betar?
Was in the...
Oh, it was within the...
Remember
within
I told
New
you...
Palestine.
Within New Palestine, we had the various groups.
Right. They call themselves Kibbutz...
Kibbutz Betar. And we got them together and spoke with their leader. And we arranged a very fine settlement. And I want to tell you, I don't think any community in this world has ever had such good collections as New Palestine. Came at the stroke of 6 a.m. in the morning. Every member of that kibbutz was out, and the garbage collected, and the American military couldn't get over the spick and span of this camp.
Now this was in contrast to some of the other camps that Rabbi Bonin talked about.
I don't know what he talked about. I do know in Linz they had problems. Not so much in Bad Gastein.
Also in Bad Gastein.
They had problems there. But the script was the important thing here. And of course, the deal there was, and let's be very pragmatic, and this is what we were doing, was recognizing that they had transients. We made it a point. They were willing to work for these extra rations, and this is what they did. And then we started getting a community newspaper, which you see here.
How did that come about?
Well,
What was your role in it?
I don't recall. It would be very nice of me to say I thought we ought to have a paper, but I don't know. We had so much originality and so many ideas there, and so many brilliant people that all I did was, if they wanted it, I got it done. That's all there was to it, you see? If a man came up, the only thing I can only say that I did not do was the mikveh. That I put my foot down on. But other than that, anything they wanted. Now, the story I mentioned before, somebody came over to me, one of the people who had been very devout and religious, and said, Chava, we would like to have, is it possible to get challah at least to celebrate Friday night? I said, let me think about it. And here is where our relationship, the Santa Claus relationship, the relationship of visiting the hospitals at camp while in the States, all of this paid off. I went over to my company commander. Pardon?
The name?
Captain Stanford, William Stanford. He lives in Hereford, Texas. And I asked him. Now, he was the company commander whose troops were on the train that Christmas Eve. And I said to him, Captain, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired of white bread. And I said, and you know, my Jewish DPs are getting sick of their brown bread. I said, I'm wondering if it would be an idea for a trade-off. And he said, you know, Heimberg, it's a very good idea. Wouldn't mind, I'm getting tired of it myself, I wouldn't mind the change. He said, you know, suppose we have a truck, go up to the camp, have 1,000 loaves on Friday, and we'll exchange them. I forgot to mention, I told him it would be for Friday evening, their Friday evening meal. And sure enough, truck backed up to the commissary at New Palestine with 1,000 loaves of white GI bread, which was challah to our displaced persons, and 1,000 loaves of black ersatz bread, which we called pumpernickel, were loaded on for the GIs for the headquarters company. And I mentioned to the captain, I said, you know, Captain, you realize that I'm getting the better part of the bargain in all fairness, because certainly black bread is not worth what good GI challah is worth. And he laughed. He says, I know. Don't worry about it. The rapport was very satisfying, and you could see why. Now, the time went on. There used to be meetings of the people in the camp. They'd have all kinds of meetings and discussions, and eventually a culture started rearing its head, coming sort of like a seed out from the ground, and you could see it coming.
What was the response of the Jewish and Gentile GIs when the chaplain or you needed their assistance in helping the survivors?
To my recollection, I can't recall any resistance on the part of any non-Jewish or Gentile GI. I can't remember any. On the other hand, the response of every Jewish GI was overwhelming, so overwhelming that enough was not enough. It's as simple as that.
Did they initiate activity, or they did it, or they did it as a response to the request of the chaplain, Jewish chaplain?
That's a good question. Both. We found that initially, before the official program of packages started, Jewish GIs were coming and bringing us their own packages. Mm-hmm. The salamis that they were getting from home, and the little things, and the bars of soap, and some of them, you know, we were entitled to a carton of cigarettes a month or something like that. Well, a carton of cigarettes was worth about $50. And many of them brought their own their ration of cigarettes. Even though they smoked, they were giving up. They'd keep 2 packs of cigarettes and give us the rest of the carton. Now, you could say here, what truer spirit of giving is there? Certainly in this case there was no tax deduction, you know, and here guys were willing to do it knowing they were losing money. So there was the real true spirit, the kindred kind spirit of giving.
Fine. Now, we touched on the American Army's reaction to your activities on behalf of European Jewry on all levels. There's nothing else you'd like to say about that?
I can't recollect now, but as I go along I might think of that.
Okay. Now,
there may have been resentment on the in the higher echelons, but I wouldn't know that.
Well, no, actually, what we do know is that on the higher echelons, it was more acceptable than on the
and the lower levels,
the middle and the lower levels. Yeah.
All right.
But I'd wondered whether there was any. That's the general impression that I'm getting from the people that I've spoken to. But
one thing, I think our military ran into many a problem with the British, though. If you recall, there was at one point an Anglo-American commission. Of course, the British didn't want this migration, and they were doing everything if they could help to stop it.
But the Americans were very sympathetic.
Extremely sympathetic. Right.
Now, the next question I wanted to ask was, did the chaplain have any contact with the JDC? And if so, how would you describe the chaplain's association with them? I noticed in one of the pictures, for instance, that
right. We had contact throughout with the JDC. And initially, the JDC's problem was very, very difficult. The initial JDC representative whose picture you saw...
Do you remember who he was?
I can't recall now. In some of the letters I may be able to pick it up, but I do remember that he was one representative spread so thin that it's a wonder that he could get around so much.
He didn't have help from anybody.
He didn't have very much help. He just didn't have the help. And then, of course, he was limited in his physical distribution facilities. It became very difficult for him. Later on, when the military government took over and things started settling a little bit more.
When would you say this was?
I would say that it started coming around September and October.
45.
45. An additional JDC representative came in, and they also in turn supplemented rations and things like that, and if I recall, drugs, and other things. But the moment the camp came in effect, they were able to work through the personnel in the camp. Again, they were limited in their channels of getting around and the channels of distribution. Now, eventually, the joint started becoming a case of where they could coordinate activities of finding the lost and surviving members of the family. If I might digress for a minute, an interesting story occurred in the camp once, which is in New Palestine, which is one of the things, the tragedies of this thing, which is one of the stories of one of the several tragedies. During this period, it seems that husband and wife were separated, and the husband was in a concentration camp, one place, the wife was another, and as years had gone by, and this is before he came to New Palestine, he had tried to locate his wife, couldn't locate him, and he got news that she was definitely killed and dead. and if I'm not mistaken, he had become blind and crippled in a way, and the girl, a nurse, who was taking care of him for several years before, just so right after the war, after having found out that his wife was dead, he married her. And so they came to live at the Camp New Palestine. And I told you there were a lot of transients coming in and out. Well, the tragedy of the story is that one day the original wife appeared on a scene. Now what happens? Well, this was an ideal situation for Beth Din. And so there was a little convening, and the final decision was, and I think everybody was happy about it, was the fact since they had not seen each other and grown apart over these years, to let the present wife and husband be, the other woman travel on. And this was one of the tragedies, simple tragedies, but one of many, you know. Okay.
How would you evaluate the relationship between the JDC workers and yourself, and meaning you and the chaplain?
When you say that, one of I assume in coordination.
Yeah. Well, how would you describe your roles? In other words, was it a complementary type of thing? Were you both working together?
Well, I would say because the joint did not have the facilities and the personnel to practically live at the camp.
Mm-hmm.
We were on a day-to-day basis, at least I was,
mm-hmm.
and the joint would have to, one man would be dispersed through, let's say, all of Austria. Now,
this was during the early months, but later on they
I assume later on, during the period that I could recollect, I think they had one or two people who handled all of Austria. And so there's a limit to how much one person could do. What they did was supplement our efforts in this respect. Whatever they did was that little bit extra to help.
Mm-hmm. But you see during this period, in any event, that the chaplain and yourself were the initiators, were the ones who were involved in the most, were the prime movers, and the JDC worker was the guy behind, filling in any gaps that he might be able to do.
Filling in or supplementing primarily the material things,
mm-hmm.
Food. I think also the JDC helped establish something with the Passover and Mosses. I don't recall. It's, at this point, to be very candid, I'm trying to remember the role, and it's of JDC at that time, and I can't remember very much of it, to be very honest with you.
Okay. Now, did you or the chaplain work with the Jewish Agency during your stay in Europe?
No, we didn't have anything to do with it at all.
Were you involved in Aliyah Bet at all?
No.
Was Rabbi Bonin involved in Aliyah Bet?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
Okay, fine. Did the chaplain work with the Jewish Agency during this period? I asked you that. What about UNRWA? I meant UNRWA.
UNRWA, there was a person from UNRWA who worked with us. Now, UNRWA, you remember I mentioned to you that it was the responsibility of the military government to see that a certain proportion of food that came from the civilian stores went to the displaced persons. Eventually, I think UNRWA took its place
mm-hmm.
and took care of that.
Mm-hmm. What was your estimation of their success or failure in their efforts?
They were reasonably, no matter what, every little bit and everything helped. And looking back, they were reasonably helpful. For instance, their greatest
help came in the medical field, and in the provision of drugs, and in the help of doctors, and the helping of people who were who had become chronically ill. There were some people who had chronic illnesses.
Now, with what other Jewish organization was the chaplain involved during this period?
I don't recall any other
Bad
than...
Hatzalah, were you involved with that? Were you involved with...
Other than informally sending letters and
be specific if you can.
I can't because I don't recall at this point.
Well, in other words, you sent letters to these organizations possibly to ask for assistance?
For helping packages and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, I don't recall very much activity with Jewish organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the Jewish Welfare Board. Now, the Jewish Welfare Board was our channel of communications in all cases. So if there really was any effort made, it was through them, and I think this is the way everything was really handled.
Right.
And I think from there, the Jewish Welfare Board, if I'm not mistaken, branched out to all of our needs.
Right. Now, was the chaplain ever called upon to smooth relations between the DPs and the U.S. Army? You mentioned that...
There have been cases. As a matter of fact, in one of my later letters, I may describe where they were going to have a protest demonstration. And I went down to... When I say I went, don't forget this. Whether the chaplain was there or Eli Heimberg was there, we were talking, both of them, as official members of the United States Army, being Jewish, who had two concerns. One, the case of the plight of our Jews, and two, the keeping the order for the United States Army, and also making sure that if there was trouble for the United States Army, the plight of the Jews might become worse.
Mm-hmm. This also was mentioned by Rabbi Bonin in this activity, but we'll get into that more specifically when you read one of your letters. Now, was there anything else aside from this that you can remember, this one incident?
Several incidents. There were incidents of black market where we had to get involved, I think.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember, and the only way I can get it would be out of the letters.
Okay, fine.
Incidentally, Alex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, were you and the chaplain involved in work within the concentration camps? Not New Palestine or any of those camps, but
no,
actual concentration camps.
The only time we were involved in the work of the concentration camp was for the hour or 2 hours that we spent at Dachau.
Okay.
And or visiting one or the other just as a visit, but we were not involved per se as changing conditions.
Okay. Now, were you ever involved in collecting guns, ammunition, and or money to be sent to Palestine?
Never, no.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it's surprising that you asked that question, because I don't... If I ever found a gun in the hands of anybody in New Palestine,
yeah,
I would have dealt severely with him, because he would have jeopardized the Jewish community there.
Well, there were chaplains who were actively involved in smuggling guns
Right.
and ammunition too.
That's all right. That's their philosophy.
No, I'm
Yeah,
not making
right.
any judgment. I'm just simply saying that...
Our philosophy was a very simple philosophy, and that is, keep New Palestine alive, and after we found out that the purpose that we had been thrown into, in other words, this was our cause for living, you might say, and we had never realized this would be our cause, then it was our purpose to keep New Palestine as a living entity to fulfill its true purpose.
And you were afraid that if...
We were afraid, very simple, that any waves being made, we were afraid, very simple, that anything that was improper would destroy the prime mission of New Palestine. After we had learned ourselves, which we did not know, what the mission was.
And when did you learn what the mission was?
That it was a transient supply camp for the road to Bari.
And when did you learn of this?
I really don't know. I really don't know. It may have come around October, November. But I realized when I made the deal with the kibbutz Betar,
yeah,
and every time I met them yelled Tel Chai, I knew that there was something in the wind more powerful than me.
Okay. Was the chaplain, or in this case Rabbi Bonin, involved in working with other Jewish chaplains on the Jewish refugee problem, or yourself?
Only insofar as the area he was involved in, other than other than this, I don't know of any other activities he was involved. He may have been, and I don't know, but it's just as well I don't.
Uh-huh.
There are sometimes things, as I mentioned, it was better, for instance, for me not to know or be told of the fact that we were not a transient camp, but a stopover camp. It was better for me not to know than to know, because if I were ever asked, I could always tell the truth that I didn't know, and it's better that I didn't know.
Okay. How would you characterize the role of the American Jewish chaplain during this period?
I would say he was a combination teacher, leader, religious leader, Robin Hood, and I use that underlined with quotes, depending upon the chaplain, and in the Jewish term, savior and prophet.
And how would you characterize the role of Rabbi Bonin?
I would include all of those and leave out Robin Hood.
Okay, fine. What do you think might have happened if Rabbi Bonin and yourself had not been there at that point?
I have a feeling, I don't think if Rabbi Bonin and myself were not there, somebody else might have been there. I don't say that it's because Eli Heimberg and Eli Bonin were there. Because any other Jew, and you notice I say any other Jew, and I don't care of how deep his convictions are, would have had the strong empathy, being put in the situation with the backing. So therefore, if you ask that question, I think the question should be changed around to what would have happened if the General Collins of the American military didn't feel that way. Because whether we were there or not, we would just happen to be two people there at the time, and I think anybody else would have done an outstanding job.
Well, fine, but what I'm asking is on a more objective level, I think, perhaps.
I'm not being unduly modest.
No, but what I'm asking is, you and Rabbi Bonin were in a unique position.
Right.
And what do you think might have happened had you had a chaplain and an assistant not been there, perhaps?
I don't think you would have had the organization. You may not have had food packages, although I think no matter who was there would have been food packages, because, as I said, when a great idea's time comes, it comes.
Right.
And everybody had food packages. I don't believe that New Palestine would have been as vital a factor in Bad Gastein in turn. You see, what they did was, when they got finished with New Palestine, they went on to Bad Gastein. From Bad Gastein, they went through the railroad tunnel through the Alps. In this case, instead of, like Hannibal, had to go over the Alps, the Jews went under the Alps through a railroad tunnel into Italy. And so this was the lifeline, really. And I have a feeling that you wouldn't have the initial strength at New Palestine. Now, maybe I'm kidding myself. Maybe with the initiative and wonderful imagination of our Israeli brothers of the Jewish Brigade. I'm sure some clever thing would have been worked out, because they were brilliant, those men, the way they handled it. We just happened to be in the right place in history at that moment.
Now, is there any other area, before we go to the letters, that I have not touched upon that you feel that should be discussed?
Well, a very historical thing I don't think was mentioned at the time, and I don't recall what date. The Anglo-American Commission visited the camp, and
the New Palestine.
Camp New Palestine, and they were put up in an outside community in one of Goring's hunting lodges. And they came and visited the camp. Judge Simon Rifkin was a member of it, and of course we told all the people when they were going to come, and we told them we hoped that they would be on the best behavior, because they were going to have all kinds of demonstrations and things like that. And I had a hard time convincing them that a demonstration was would work to our disadvantage. And so I asked them, we asked ourselves the questions that the Anglo-American Commission would ask. Why do you want to go to Israel? You really want to go to Israel? You don't want to. Wouldn't you rather go to the United States? These are the catch questions. Or why don't you want to go back to the place where you came from? You'll have a great opportunity now. And the answer was, if I came from Poland and all my people were killed there, would you go home and live in a cemetery? Would you go back to a cemetery? And so all of these people, they knew what they wanted. Some wanted to go to the United States, and they said why, but the majority wanted to go to Israel. They didn't want to be classified anymore as an outsider. A lot of these people always felt that they had become part of the country. They're no more outsiders, and yet in their heart they felt they were insiders, and all of the non-Jews, regardless of how dedicated they were to their country, they were still outsiders.
Your impression really is that they wanted to go to Palestine. This was really their first desire. That had they had all the options available to them, had they been able to come into America, they would have not chosen that?
Yes, some of them yes, some of them
but
no.
The majority.
But don't forget this. Don't forget this. Being very realistic. It was at this time that we had a great Zionist upsurge. Whether it be political or what is immaterial. We had just gone through a terrible catastrophe in Europe. These people who were caught in this thing, these people who were pawns, who had no control over their lives, now are giving an opportunity to escape. And the escape was under the auspices of Zionism. Well, if you're given the opportunity, your first choice, realistically, will be to the place of your benefactor.
But had the benefactor been America, would they, and Israel, or Palestine at that point, where do you think they might have gone?
They might have gone to America. Many of them would have been glad to go to America.
Okay, that's in other words, what I'm really asking is, had they had all the opportunities, given an equal opportunity to go to America and go to Palestine, where would they have gone?
That I can't truthfully say, because right now it's conjecture, and it wouldn't be.
The reason why I ask is because that several people have indicated that in their relationship or in their dealings with the DPs, that they felt that had the DPs had the opportunity to go to America, they would have done so. And I'm just trying to...
Yes. You see, again, it's conjecture on their part. And don't forget, 30 years later, it's very difficult for me to say, but I do say this. As they say in Yiddish, America's always been the Golden Medina.
Yeah.
And so, if a person's given the opportunity to the land of gold as compared to the land where you're going to get killed, where are you going to go? Okay. It's a logical thing. However, from a practical point of view, if you were brought out under the auspices of the Zionist organization, it's only natural that your loyalty would be there.
Okay.
Mine would be if I was just brought out of Poland, and somebody said, "Look it, we'll get you to Palestine." Nobody told me you're going to get to America, you know. And here these people say, "We'll get you to Palestine." Do you think I'm going to change my loyalty for 1 minute to America, even though I'd like to go to America?
Okay. Understood.
Okay.
Now you mentioned in passing when we were talking about the role of the Jewish GI that there was a diversion of even of railroad cars of medicine. Is it possible to interview that person or persons who were involved in that activity?
He's here in town. That's what he told me. His name is Dr. Robert Siegel.
S-I-E-G.
S-I-E-G-E-L.
Okay.